Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. I've got a machine to try out. The other day I had Adam from ProSew organise this machine to come out to my home for me to test. So I'm going to review and test this machine to see what I think of it. I had a quick go of this machine when we first switched it on and it was set up in my room, and I have to say within the first stitch I was amazed. So that's just a little hint as to what I already think of this machine anyhow. Stick around and I'm going to go through some of the features of this machine, and I'm also going to make a couple of comparisons from my Jack A4 machine that I did a review on a few weeks ago to this particular one. There are a couple of outstanding features that I really like on this particular machine. So stick around and we'll see what features this machine has, and spoiler alert, we all know that I love it, hey? So let's see what this machine can do. It's all push button, so you don't have any dials or anything. On this side here, you've got your reverse button, your needle up and down, you've got a half stitch and a quarter stitch, and you've got your tension adjustment just there. So you press that and you can do a quarter stitch, and that one there is a half stitch, and you can actually adjust the settings for the stitch lengths as well. So let me start in here. Now this machine automatically locks after a few seconds of being idle. So it doesn't mean that you can't sew, it means that you can't touch any buttons in here, so you can't do any damage to the screen or muck up your settings because the machine locks. So there's the lock button, you just press that to unlock it, and if I wanted to adjust the stitch length, for example, I would press this button here where it says 2.6 and I can adjust the stitch length to whatever I like. So if I wanted a really long stitch length, I just keep going higher until I get to the 6mm, and then I can save that, and then you could see there that the stitch length is 4.5. Now I can go and sew, I can do whatever I like here. Keep an eye out on that lock button there. When it's idle for a few seconds, I'm not sure how many, probably about 30 seconds or so, when it's idle it'll actually revert back to the lock stage, so that then if you have children coming past or you accidentally brush past it, you're not going to be able to change the settings. See how that's locked? So I can't go and change the stitch length now until I unlock this again. So automatically I really like that particular feature. There have been many times when I've accidentally knocked the screen. Go back in there, I can reset that to the factory setting, I can reduce that to the stitch length that I like to use. Save that, and you can lock it yourself if you want to, or you can go and change your next setting. This button here is the presser foot height. So you can adjust the height of the presser foot. So when the presser foot comes up, it automatically lifts by itself. You can adjust the height of that. So the maximum is 150. So I can increase that to 150, save that, raise the foot. You can see how high that foot is. Almost the thickness of my finger can go under there. I'm not game enough to go any further because knowing me, I'd stitch my finger. See how quiet this is? That's so quiet. And if I go back in here, I'll have to unlock it. I can set this to a smaller height. Now when I go to lift the presser foot, you can see it's much lower. Previously I had it on the maximum setting so the foot would raise as high as my finger, but now that I've got it set lower, that's as high as it will go. So I'm going to change that back to 110. I'll see how that goes. If I'm doing jeans or anything thick, maybe some quilting, I might want the foot to come up higher. I'll save that. I'll play around with that setting and see if I need it to go any higher. This button here is the speed selector. So this, I think this machine does up to 4,000 stitches per minute, I think, and the minimum is 100 stitches per minute. It's set at 3,500. You can make this go as fast or as slow as you like within those parameters. I'm not going to change that. And this little button here, if you're running a production service and you want to spy on your workers and see how much work they're doing, this is actually a stitch counter. I believe this resets every time the machine is switched off. I don't necessarily think that that's something useful useful, but if you're a production company and you need to know how many seams a person's doing a day, you can keep track of how much they're doing. This button here is your start back tack, and the one next to it is your end back tack. So when you start sewing, it's going to do 3 stitches forward, then it'll go 3 stitches back, and you'll just keep on sewing, and when you get to the end, it'll do the same thing in reverse. You can set this as just a normal single back tack. Oops, can't change the settings until I unlock it. You can change it to a double back tack, or you've got forward and back, and you can do the same thing with that one. They're independent of each other, or you can have nothing at all, or you can just have a half. So you can change this to whatever you like. Leave that at the 4, so it'll do a quick back tack back and forward, and then I'll continue sewing. And when I'm ready to stop, it'll just do the, I think it's a half back tack. There we go. So on that, you've done the back tack, back and forward, stitching down, and then it's just gone down and back. So you can change that to whatever setting you like. I usually have it as just a regular back tack, back and forward. This is your needle stop position, so you can decide whether you want your machine to sew with the needle down or up. So if I continue to sew, take my foot away, the needle will stop down. I can change that so that the needle stops up, keep sewing, and the needle will come up, and so will the foot. So my preference is to have the needle down, continue sewing. If I heel down on the foot controller, it'll cut my thread for me. The thread trimming, if you don't want it to cut the thread for you, it won't. So you just sew along. When you finish, you'll do your back stitch, but the thread is still attached to the machine. I like having my thread trimmed. One of the most important features when I bought my first industrial machine was to make sure it had thread trimming and that I could choose whether I had the needle up or down. Mode selection. This one here will do your start and end back tack. So you've got your start tack, which is A and B. C and D are your end back tacks. You can change all of these figures. So say I wanted to have this do 6 stitches to begin with. So I have 6 stitches to begin with, then I go back 3, and say I want to finish up with 6 stitches at the end. And this 25 is the amount of stitches that it's going to do in between that time. I'm doing a start tack and a back tack with 6 and 3 stitches. It'll do 25 stitches, and then it'll end with the 6 and the 3. Let me show you. So that's finished by itself. It started with the 6 stitches, went back 3, and then came down and did 25 stitches. Gets to the end, it does 6 stitches and comes back 3, and then it finishes by itself. You can change that to however many stitches you want to have here. I don't know what the maximum is, probably 99 because we've only got 2 digits at the end there. I'll change that back to 25 because that's the setting. This is something that I'm likely to use when I do my labels. Change that back to 3. It's very easy to navigate this panel. This selection here is just going to do a back tack up and down and up and down. It's going to do 4 of them, and it's going to do 8 stitches each. So if I wanted to, I can make it do 6. So it'll go up and down 6 times, and I can make this do 4 stitches on the back. So that's the start, that's the end, and it'll do it 6 times. Let's have a look. Okay, so I went off the fabric because I didn't realise which way it would actually go. So it's just done a start tack and an end tack with the 4 and 8 stitches, and it's done that 6 times. I will reset that. So it's very, very easy to navigate this panel. When you press this mode selection button, you've got that one there will do the amount of stitches that you want to sew in total. This one here does your back and forth, back and forth. In the mode selection, say you wanted to sew some labels on. So I have my little rectangular labels. They are about 23 stitches long on the long sides and about 7 or 8 stitches on the short sides. That of course depends on your stitch length. If I go to that little icon just there, you've got program 1, that's going to be 8 stitches. If I change that button to program 2, I can change this to 21 stitches and then select program 3 and leave it at 8 stitches. Select program 4 and I'll make that 21 stitches. Then I can go and sew my labels onto my fabric. So I'll start sewing. Lift your work, turn it around. So it's done program 1, which was 8 stitches. Now I'm doing program 2 and it's done 21 stitches. Lift your foot. Program 3 was 8 stitches again. And then I can come back down and it'll finish with program 4 and do 21 stitches. So you can see there, that's done a really nice rectangle. If I want to do patterns, you can see here there are different patterns all within the straight stitch parameters. So if I went to pattern number 1, it's going to do a few back stitches and a stitch, back stitch, stitch, and so on. So if I click on pattern here and choose pattern number 1 and save that, you can actually change the settings for this as well. With pattern number 1, you can tell it how many times it's going to repeat and what the stitch length is going to be. So if I wanted this to repeat 3 times, press OK. The big button is the OK. And the stitch length, I can make that 3 instead of 4.8. So I can just go and start sewing, go back home. I'm doing pattern number 1 as selected. And you can see that it does the back and forth and then it does a shorter stitch and the back and forth and so on. There's a clamping feature here. So if you have the clamping button lit up, then when you stitch, you're going to have some nesting underneath. So let's show you how this looks. So I've got the clamping feature on, continue to sew, finish up, and you can see the thread nesting a little bit underneath there. If I turn that feature off, you can see the difference there. So you don't have all that nesting underneath your fabric. So this is with the clamping on and this is with the clamping off. So it's a little bit neater when you don't have that clamping feature on. This little button here is your settings feature. So there's 3 pages of settings on your machine that you can go through. So there's lots of settings in here. I better not play with these buttons. I might get in trouble. It's not my machine. I love buttons. I love pushing buttons. There are lots and lots of different settings in the machine. Very, very user-friendly. You've got all your controls at the touch of a button there. The most impressive part of this machine for me is how quiet the presser foot is. Having the stepping motor rather than a noisy solenoid is just amazing. You know, every time my foot goes up, I'm not making a really loud racket like you hear on my other machine. Let me take you to the other machine and I'll show you the difference with the noise. Okay, so this is my Jack A4, which I did a review for quite a few weeks back. And I really do like this machine, but the one thing that irks me about this machine is the noise that it makes. So just be prepared for the noise now. I'll start sewing. And when I stop, see that? Every time I lift my presser foot, it makes a really loud clunking noise. So that's the solenoid. The other machine has a stepping motor, which is much more quiet, whereas this particular machine, or all of the Jack machines, I believe, have a solenoid in them, which are very, very noisy. So when I heel back now to cut my thread, the foot will lift, so just be aware of the noise. And it stops sewing. So each time I raise my foot, it makes that clunking noise. Let's go back over to the other machine. And each time I raise my foot, it's very quiet. It's such a quiet machine. I think this is by far the best feature of the machine. Oh no, I can't really say that. I think these touch screen on the machine is really great too. The Jack's got a great touch screen, but the settings in here are so much better. It's much more user friendly. You know, I can go and change my settings and not be afraid that I've broken something or just mucked up all my settings without having to reset the machine. If I do anything wrong on this machine, I don't have to reset anything. I just reset whatever it was that I mucked up. But the silence of the presser foot is just amazing. It comes up, it's quiet. Quiet. This machine is actually going to be a lot better for me in editing my videos. When I edit my videos for YouTube, I've got to constantly cut out that noise that the solenoid makes on my jack machine. So I would really, really like to keep this machine, and I'm going to see if there's any way I can maybe have this machine. So what do you think? Do you think I should keep this? Do you think that I can just lock the doors to my house and make sure that nobody comes in and takes this back? Just kidding, Adam. Look, I have to say I do love this machine. Because I've already got the jack sewing machine, there are features that I'm used to with that particular machine that I'm not used to with this. So this one does have a knee lifter underneath. The knee lifter for me is probably a little bit more jerky, but that's only because I'm not used to the way that particular knee lifter works. It's not an issue for sewing for doing any of your stitches at all. In fact, you don't really need to use the knee lifter when you've got your presser foot adjustments set the way that you want them. I love that this has got a really quiet presser foot. The noisy solenoid on the machine that I've got at the shop, I often wonder if it's annoying customers when they're in the shop, because they'll be walking around the shop. They might be there for 10 or 15 minutes and I'm constantly going up and down with my presser foot and it's clunking away because of that noisy solenoid. So I think something like this, when you're in a situation when you're in an area with other people, I think the stepping motor is so much better for your sanity, I guess. It's a much quieter machine. I love that you can change the settings on this and they're very, very easy to change. Once you get familiar with what each function does, it's a lot easier to change the settings. I still don't know what all of the features do because I don't use all of the features even on my A4. It's just such an easy machine to program. I really, really like this. Adam, I want it. I want to keep it. Please give it to me. If you're interested in the ProSew machines, contact Adam and he will help you out no matter whereabouts in Australia you are. I'll leave his contact details in the description box below. Wherever you are in the world, I'm sure Adam can help you to source these particular machines if you're not in Australia. I hope you've enjoyed this review video. I've really enjoyed this one. I've known about this machine being here for quite a while, and I've been wanting to get my hands on one and try it out because I've heard about the silent stepping motor. I really like that. The rest of it is easy to use. It stitches really well. That's the most important thing, is that it stitches well. It looks nice as well, so it's a really nice colour. Don't know if it matches my yellow walls, but it's a really nice colour anyway. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think. I think I deserve it. Catch you next time.